Mabuhay, Kamustika, welcome, how are you? This is Bob from Love Beyond the Sea. Still more ways to keep your Filipina from changing in America or becoming westernized or Americanized. This is a second upload converted from a live stream. It is about keeping your wife Filipinized or Filipinized, maintaining the attributes that attracted you to her in the first place. You should start by marrying a Filipina with the right stuff to not become Americanized in the first place. But once she is here, it is up to you to make sure that you treat her a certain way, which will ensure she wants to stay the way she is. If you hear people tell you to never bring a Filipina to your country, do not listen to them. Most, if not all of them, are not on good terms with the Filipina. Yesterday I covered these in a little detail. The husband responsible to make a healthy and safe culture or environment for her. Tell her that America may not be what she thinks it is. Be upfront about your concerns about becoming Americanized. Learn about and appreciate the Philippines. Listen to Philippine music together. Eat Philippine foods together. Watch Philippine movies together. Keep up with news from the Philippines. Don't talk condescendingly about the Philippines. Praise values that oppose becoming Americanized. Avoid being excessively frugal. Have a financial plan for your futures. Be a hard worker and get extra hours if possible. So let's keep on moving because there's more. Do activities together. This should be self-explanatory, but I mention this so that she feels like you are invested in the relationship. A Filipina isn't looking for a perfect man. She is looking for a stable, loving, kind, and considerate husband. If the foreign man somehow is thinking that since he has won this, great prize in marriage, who should just be glad she's out of the Philippines and has it so much better than before, I think that is a recipe for complacency, and that could unwittingly crack the door open for someone to plant wrong ideas in her head. Let's just assume that there will be someone or some people trying to wrongly influence your Filipino wife. So you need to go on dates together. I'd love to go for some walks with my wife, but we haven't done a lot so far, and it's about to get cold, so that's out until next year. We have taken a few trips in the car in addition to that big vacation in Paris and the Philippines. We try to have dinner together instead of doing our separate things. My wife gets home from work after I do, and even if I have already eaten, I should go upstairs to the kitchen and be there with her when she gets home and has dinner. I always have to start that rice cooker too. It is good for us that we are both homebodies, so just being at home together is satisfying for both of us. She is a big LeBron James fan, so we've watched some of his highlights, even a full game a few years ago. She has gone to college basketball games with me and even a football game. She isn't really into football, but she has watched some with me on TV. At the game that we were at in person, our team got a sack late in the game to preserve the win. The crowd of 92,000 people was going crazy, and I looked at my wife, and there she was tapping away on her cell phone. I should add, and this isn't easy for me, but to be willing to try things you haven't done before, like places to eat or places to see. My wife likes theatrical plays, so we've gone to a handful of those, and hopefully we'll continue to. Also, let her build her nest in your home. You'll want to do things for and with your Filipino wife that encourages her to invest herself in the relationship. One of those things would be to pretty much give her the oversight of how your house looks. In all likelihood, she will have different ideas of color scheme, how to decorate, where to put things, etc. She will do things differently than in the home you grew up in and the way you did things, had them arranged before you got married. It may be a blend of the way her place was in the Philippines and what she envisions your place together to look like. I see no reason why to not defer to her in this area, which may be way more important to her than to you anyway. My wife likes to watch those shows on television where renovations are done. She likes to watch with my mother. She watches YouTube videos on how to decorate. She is naturally organized, which I love about her. She picked the colors to our basement where we spend most of our time. She decides where the furniture goes, where the television should be. I want her to know that this is her house. She belongs here. I don't see a need to interfere and insist that we have things lined up by my preference. She has a vision for how we could renovate our storage room, for what we could do in the garage to help with storage space. If I were to insist on my way, this just potentially sets her up to be contaminated with feminism, because other women could tell her that I'm just trying to control her and am being unfair and so on. Here's a tip: talk with her family. I don't know why a Filipina would emotionally leave her Philippine roots being married to a man who talks to her family or makes an honest attempt to do so. She can always find someone who isn't interested in her family, who isn't interested in learning some Filipino words, who isn't interested in basically knowing how they are doing. To be disinterested in talking or texting with her family would cause resentment, but could also give her the notion that she should be looking for someone else. This area is important, even if it just is waving or saying their name. Also, love her family. It isn't possible to say you love her without doing something tangible to show it. Personally speaking, helping my wife's family with some financial needs is a great way to show her that I love her family. I can't just say that I love them and not do something. Does it always have to do with money? In some cases, no, but in many cases, yes, it does. To show them love is to meet whatever need they may have that you are able to meet, to help prevent your Filipino wife from becoming Americanized, to think about hypergamy, to start to develop habits that are different than what she is used to. Loving her family is a good way to keep her with you, to keep her loyal to you. I get the impression when we've been in the Philippines that sometimes my wife feels like I am avoiding her family if I would rather stay in the air-conditioned hotel room or take a nap. I tell her the heat bothers me and I am tired, but I also want to go with her family at least once a day. That will change when we're in the Philippines in our own house. Another good thing you can do is memorize as many names of family members as possible. Also, try to help her grow as a person. The next three are things that you might be tempted to think will help set her up to leave you, but they should have the opposite effect. If you trust her, and that could be yet another point to list here, you will want her to be successful in any way possible, maybe especially if you have a large age gap. If so, you know that she may live a long time after your death, and you want to help put her in a position to be successful in life. If, while helping her grow and flourish, you are the type of husband I try to teach about on Love Beyond the Sea, she should want to stay with you and not be influenced by harmful outside influences. How have I tried to do this? At one time, my wife was considering some schooling, perhaps at a community college nearby. I would have supported her in that. I did what I could to help her find a job. I have encouraged her at work to try to develop her computer skills even more, because that is something that she is good at. It can help her on the job. She is mechanically inclined, so I have encouraged her to learn different jobs at her current job that would help the group and help her. I taught her to drive. I encourage her to attend women's events at church, and she recently went to a conference with some women from church. If I see something she does well, then I try to encourage her to find a way to use it, especially to help others. She is good with children, so I have encouraged her with that. I want her to grow socially too, and since she is on the shy side, I have to be patient. Help her find good friends. I have a video about helping her find friends. You can't control who she will come across, but you can be aware of potential women that could be a good influence on her. I found a married Filipina, a bit older than my wife, with 3 children, who has been a good influence on my wife. I had asked my pastor if he knew anyone who could help with this when my wife arrived here in January of 16. There was a woman at church who was a little older, but she and her husband moved away recently, unfortunately, for my wife. I pray about this because it is important. If your Philippine has the right kind of friends, she is less likely to be victimized by becoming Americanized. I am impressed with the friends my wife has back in the Philippines. I wish it were always possible to get to know her friends back home. I have met them on the 4 times I've been there, and I have told her since we've been married that she has good, clean, wholesome friends that I can't believe aren't married. Maybe they're dating somebody, I don't know. They aren't Americanized or westernized, and by complimenting her on her choice of friends, I am reinforcing the kind of values that will help her remain a committed wife while retaining the characteristics that attracted me to her to begin with. Here's another tip: help her find a job. This will take a lot of pressure off of trying to not be too frugal. Sure, if she works, she could be subject to being influenced by someone with feministic views, but unless the foreign man is loaded, she will need to have a job, and she probably will want to work anyway. Having a job will allow her to help her family a lot. If she doesn't work, she will get bored, and who knows, that could influence her to deviate from her usual nature. If she isn't allowed to work, she could give in to other people telling her she is being treated poorly and might rebel. If the man is in a situation where he has enough income that she doesn't have to work and he is able to help her family sufficiently, then that would be different as long as she has enough fulfilling things to do during the day. Even so, she still might refuse to not work, and I would lean towards letting her work. After a while, if she feels that it is too much of a hassle, then she would be able to stay at home. But the key here is that she is allowed to work. She will likely feel shame. That's right, shame, if she doesn't send money back home. Working also assumes you will need to teach her how to drive or have someone else do it, but I think it would be better to do it with her because that is another activity you can do together and look back upon later. Also, don't control her. I have a video called "There is No Need to Control Your Filipina." If she has been working to support her family in the Philippines, again, she will probably want to continue that in America. It is likely a source of pride for her. Good pride. Disallowing that might be a source of conflict. If your Filipino wife is much younger, then it is possible there is more potential for conflict in the area of her feeling she is being controlled. That is because the man could think that she should always agree and accept what he says, since this is his country. He knows the lay of the land, is wiser, and makes more money. Control could be in how she dresses, whether she wears makeup or not, her hairstyle, eating habits, how much time she is on Facebook, how she decorates the house, the music she listens to, how frugal she is, how she washes the dishes or the clothes, where she puts all the stuff in the bathroom, the food she cooks, and 100 more things. If something is of dire importance to the man, they need to discuss it. But what the older foreigner has to keep in mind is he is not her father, neither does she want him to be. She is his wife, his partner, his companion. I have a video called "Husband or Father Figure to Your Filipino Wife." You could also see the playlist called "Younger Wife." Another source of conflict can be how much money you will need to use to support her family in the Philippines. If the foreigner is stingy here or insists that no money will be given, then that could very well lead her to going off the rails and starting to listen to the feministic influences that she may be exposed to. This is a good time in the video to say that when men criticize a Filipina for becoming Americanized, I think he always needs to be aware of how he can positively and negatively impact that. The purpose of this upload is to show men a lot of ways he's able to help prevent his Filipino wife from becoming Americanized. There are things he can do to keep her grounded and faithful. I am detailing quite a few. If he is the opposite of these, then he would be part of the problem with her changing her attitude. Filipinos will become Americanized is a myth. They might, especially if they're predisposed to it, so choose wisely, but I believe that the husband has enough influence to prevent this from happening. Now, let me exaggerate this to make a point. If this Filipina's husband is controlling, spends ample time with his friends or in a hobby, thus leaving her alone, is suspicious of her working and making friends, talks down about the Philippines, refuses to try Filipino food, doesn't communicate at all with the family, he would have a lot of audacity to blame his wife for becoming Americanized. In my videos, I've always alluded to or stated that the man needs to take responsibility for what happens in the marriage. He is the CEO of the marriage. The Bible calls it being the head of his wife. He needs to find solutions to problems. He has to work to keep them from happening or worsening. He isn't perfect, but doesn't have to be. He needs to be discerning enough to know that in America there are a lot of negative influences, such as feminism. His new Filipino wife very well might hear some things from women with bad intentions to get her to become enlightened. Men might get in her ear about being married to a much older man. If he can do the things I am listing here, he is helping immensely to lessen the likelihood his Filipina will succumb to being Americanized. Another thing to think about, don't be overprotective. She will resent this. This is similar to the previous one, but the difference is that being controlling is more absolute or total, whereas being overprotective allows for more freedom but has an element of distrust or giving the impression your Filipino wife is not capable. One example would be if I refuse to allow my wife to learn how to drive. It's one thing if she has poor vision or poor reflexes, but it's another if there really isn't a good reason for her not to learn how to drive, yet I still won't let her. I'm always cognizant something could happen to her on the road, so I frequently remind her to drive safely, look both ways when she is in the when she's the first car into the intersection, and be careful when she's on ice. Recently, someone was killed on a nearby intersection where we live, and a man at work nearly lost his wife and daughter when a 17-year-old went barreling through an intersection at 50 miles an hour, running into their car. I would wrap my wife in bubble wrap if I could to keep her safe, but I have to trust her to drive to work and to other places, especially when I get older and can't drive anymore. An exception is that I could see would be if you live in an area of very heavy traffic, which is generally dangerous. And this could also apply to being overprotective about her friends. You should be able to trust that she has the sense to avoid the wrong type of women for friendship. Unnecessary restriction on what she does with the money she earns could fall into the overprotective category. I can talk to her about what I consider wasteful and unnecessary, but I have to be able to trust her to learn to make good decisions. After all, if she works in America, she will be making money hand over fist compared to the Philippines, and like the rest of us, will learn how to make good use of it. And we all spend some money frivolously now and then. Another way to be overprotective, which you don't want to do, is with the clothes she wears. If you married a younger Filipina, you don't want her dressed like an older woman. At least I don't. I want her to shop at the stores for younger women. We've got those stores here, and we've gone there together. I don't even mind sorting through the clothes with her or asking for help from the salespeople. Okay, maybe I'm bragging a bit here. I don't want her to dress like a slut, and neither does she. She has good sense. I don't want to force her to wear clothes that I consider a turn on, although I do tell her what they are. To be controlling would be to insist she dress a certain way or prohibit her from wearing certain clothes. And to be overprotective would be to harp on what not to wear and to overstate your preference for certain clothes. Another thing that would be overprotective would be to also want to know who she is texting with or messaging with, as if you didn't trust her. If you attempt to restrict her ability to make certain choices, then you run the risk of her becoming Americanized, by virtue of her becoming open to the words of others who are not responsible for her and who don't care about her as much as you do. Also, be committed to her. If your wife knows that you are 100% committed to her, then she is less likely to give in to temptation to be influenced by someone who tells her you are too old for her. She could do better. She's being oppressed by her husband. She should go her own way, and so on. Learn to speak Filipino, at least some words or phrases. I will approach this from the opposite side. The foreigner who shows no interest in learning any Filipino words or phrases is sending the message that he is not interested in her culture, and the subtle message that he might not be completely invested in her. If you know that she will respect you for trying to learn a few words, and you know that now since I just told you, then to be disinterested in that will probably hurt her feelings. Learning some words and phrases can only help bring you closer together. Anything that, you know, can do that will help prevent her from becoming Americanized. Treat her well. I have a respect series, I call it. I have a how to communicate series, how to love your Filipino wife, help with marital harmony, etc. I have made these videos to help with being able to treat your Filipino wife well and a lot more. My thought here is, why would she be swayed to adopt liberal American ways if she feels safe and secure with her husband? I'm not suggesting you have to live in fear of her becoming Americanized by suggesting these things, only that by treating her as well as possible, it will be more difficult for outside influences to have an effect on her. Also, consider at least retiring. Consider retiring in the Philippines. One thing this does is limit the time your Filipino wife could be contaminated by feministic ideas. If you have plans on retiring in the Philippines, her thoughts will be on one day being with her family again every day, and she is less likely to become Americanized, to be caught up in the liberality of America. Her thoughts will be on going home again, not on picking up bad habits from people who are not Filipinized. I can't speak for all Filipinas in another country, but I would bet that most of them would prefer to live in the Philippines if they were more financially secure. If their husband is open to that, I can only see that as being good for her to retain her Philippine ideals and outlook on life, which foreigners find very attractive. Engage in marriage talk. The reason I think this is important is that it shows you are committed to her. Talk to her about your needs and her needs. Talk about the two of you being one unit. Ask her what she needs to feel safe, protected. When I dated my wife online, it didn't take long for me to talk to her about marriage, what I saw being married to me would look like. I told her I wanted to make her dreams come true, to protect her and provide for her. As we have been married now for 5 years and 4 months, I still talk to her about that. I reiterate my love for her and my goals and expectations of myself as a husband. I tell her I am to give up my life to her, to meet her needs, to be unselfish. I also talk to her about the kind of wife I need and let her know when she pleases me. Ask her, what are you thinking, feeling, believing, experiencing? This is a good practice, especially if your wife is not very talkative. My wife doesn't exactly wear her heart on her sleeve like I do. I can tell by her facial expression or her body language if something isn't right, but I think her preference would be to not say anything most of the time. I am not like that. I need to sensitively ask her if anything is wrong, if she's all right. Most of the time when I ask her how she is doing or how her day at work was, she will reply with, good. I may have to ask her what was good about her day. Saying to her, honey, what's on your mind? Sweetie, how are you feeling? My love, what do you believe about this? Honey bear, what are you experiencing right now? What's going on inside of you? Are good ways to allow her to talk about something that is bothering her. Life is so busy here in America, the days pass quickly. It can be a challenge to know how our wife is doing and get into some routine. When you are showing an interest in her thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and experiences, she gets the message that you are keenly interested in her well-being. She'll know that any guy that tries to hit on her are only interested in themselves, thinking they can turn her away from you. She will appreciate that she has it good with you. The more you can do to show her your commitment to her well-being, the less likely she is to be vulnerable to attacks from the outside like feministic, individualistic, and selfish ideas. You could attend the marriage conference together. I know someone that used to go every year to the same one. This shows that your marriage to her is important to you. She will hear words from others that will reinforce what you have hopefully been telling her. Keeping healthy marriage concepts in mind will help shield her from outside influences that attempt to minimize your relationship and the importance of commitment. There is temptation out there. There is a reason people say that you shouldn't bring your Filipina to America, that she will become Americanized. But I think this is too one-sided. There are good reasons for her to be in America, and there are things a foreign husband can do to minimize the risk of her becoming Americanized. Finding a good Filipino wife is a tremendous blessing. There's nothing better than a loving, mutually giving relationship between a man and a woman. My goal with this video has been to help encourage foreigners to consider that she isn't guaranteed to fall victim to feminism in America, to leave her husband high and dry. She has to have a good head on her shoulders to begin with. That's a topic for another video. The foreign husband must protect her from certain temptations, and I hope you will find this video helpful. Tonight we cover do activities together, let her build her nest in your home, talk with her family, love her family, help her grow as a person, help her find good friends, help her find a job, teach her to drive, don't control her, don't be overprotective, be committed to her, learn to speak Filipino, at least some words or phrases. Talked about the Treat Her Well Respect series, how to communicate, how to love her, help with marital harmony. You can look at those playlists. Maybe consider retiring in the Philippines, engage in marriage talk, ask her, this is a good way to get to know her, get her talking. What are you thinking, feeling, believing, experiencing? Attend a marriage conference together. Visit the lvbts.com website and consider the new message board. I am as concerned as any man about my Filipina becoming Americanized, but have taken the initiative to see that it doesn't happen with my love beyond the sea.